Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the fourth edition of the 2v1 podcast. My name is Will Tannenbaum, joined by my partners Henry Geller and Andrew Reedman. We have a fun episode for you today. Today we'll be talking about one of the biggest jokes in the football media industry, Pro Football Focus, and since we're not making any money off this podcast, we can do all the trash talking we want.
So, if you haven't heard of Pro Football Focus before, it's basically just a company that started out by giving grades to every football player who plays a down of football. So, they give a grade to every player. So, for example, if Will, Andrew, and I were playing against each other, they might give Will an 86, me a 75, and Andrew a 62. But what we're going to talk about today is why those ratings are completely meaningless and useless. But then the company sort of evolved to become sort of a social media influencer of football as well. And we're going to also be discussing how their social media team and their social media influence is a complete joke.
And yeah, so while sometimes a lot of their opinions do make sense, most times they get a lot of criticism and hate, and they honestly deserve it because some of their opinions sound like they were done by about a 5 or 6 year old. So,
all right, kicking it off with our first horrible take. One of the PFF social media guys tweeted out after the football season, the only team to not allow 28 or more points in a game last season was the Washington football team. A couple reasons why that's wrong. Well, four to be specific. Sunday against the Cardinals, they let up 30 points. The following Sunday, they let up 34 against the Browns. The Sunday after that, they let up 31 against the Ravens. And then the Sunday after that, they let up 30 against the Rams. So I'm not sure really what the pro football guy was going for on this, but there's not really any way to explain your tweet. 30 is more than 28, and in 4 consecutive games, that's what happens.
Something I find funny too is the comments on the tweet here, saying PFF's Twitter is a troll account at this point. Everyone sort of understands that PFF's social media team and accounts are just a joke and just don't really mean anything and don't hold any weight anymore, just because of the amount of just ridiculous stuff that they put on and just the fact that they do no research or anything. So I just find all of that really funny. Andrew, do you have another bad PFF take?
yes, so I was looking at PFF and I saw that they posted a tweet on a Russell Wilson for Dak Prescott trade. And on the picture that they tweeted, it shows Russell Wilson's grade as a 93.9 and Dak Prescott's grade as an 83.9. Russell Wilson coming in ranked 2nd and Dak coming in ranked 14th. This post is not a normal post, as it's probably one of the craziest trades that anyone has seen between quarterbacks, and especially because they're saying that the Seahawks would have to tag Russell Wilson just to trade him, which means they would be paying $30 million on top of paying Dak $40 million after they get him in the trade. So, I mean, the trade honestly makes no sense, as the Seahawks would be getting a worse QB, in my opinion, and in all the ranking and stat opinions. And they're also losing a crazy amount of money. And also, in the comments, like the last tweet, people kind of went off on PFF, which kind of made me laugh. People were talking about how it was run by a 4-year-old, how their preschooler could have made a better trade. Someone made a voting saying, is this a fair trade? It's a 90.5% no, and 9% of people said yes. But I mean, I think those yes people were kind of joking. People are just saying no with a period in the comments. Absolutely not. TF is this, which I guess we all know what that means. So I mean, it just shows that a lot of what they post, even though it's crazy, I think they do it for attention. And the more bold and crazy statements they make, the more attention they get. So if that's what they're going for, it's working. But
Their social media team is a complete joke, and everything that they post is completely ridiculous. And sort of just moving on from that, sort of to their grading and how they grade players, I just specifically found examples of them completely screwing up grading Ravens players. Just that sort of was the thing that caught my eye. I think also because I follow some of these Ravens players on Twitter who actually responded to the tweet. So on March 16th, when the Ravens re-signed Derek Wolfe to a 3-year deal, PFF tweeted out, Ravens are re-signing Derek Wolfe on a 3-year, $12 million deal. Wolfe had a 69.7 PFF grade since 2019 for the season that the Ravens had him, putting him as the 37th best player at his position. Keep in mind there's 32 teams. And Derek Wolfe, if you remember, he had a really good season. He was a really good veteran player on the Ravens. And he responded to the PFF tweet that said, "At PFF, you guys are so lame. Do me a favor and don't bother grading my film at all. My coach's grade is the only one that matters." Comments back to Derek Wolfe said, "Go off." Mark Ingram had like that talking face, like supporting him. There's just everyone sort of agrees that these grades don't mean anything, because how are you going to give someone that's essentially a D+ grade for someone who had a really good season?
Held down the fort when Calais was going.
Oh yeah, 100%.
the rankings make no sense whatsoever.
Make absolutely no sense. And I have some more grades. So it's crazy. They sell a subscription to have access to see all of the players' grades. It's like $10 a month, so I wasn't going to pay for that. That definitely would have been a waste of money. So it took me a long time to find someone who just wrote about these grades and wrote down some of them. And so I found someone on Reddit who posted just about Ravens offensive grades and sort of how ridiculous they were. So the total average for the Ravens offense last season was a 68.05. So they gave the Ravens offense a D+. Compare this to the Browns. They gave the Browns, who they had a good offense. I wouldn't say that they're much better than the Ravens. They gave the Browns a 78.4 grade, which is still not very good. It's a C+. And so I just want to go through some of the Ravens players who I just thought they had absolutely no idea. Like, they clearly hadn't watched them in the season. First, Lamar Jackson. Their season grade for our star quarterback was a 78.4, a C+. And Lamar had an exceptionally great year. He led the team to, how many wins did they have this season? They have 11 or 12 wins this season. They played really well, and Lamar was really the reason why this offense was good. He led the offense, and he was able to lead the rushing attack, the passing attack, and everything. Another player I would really like to highlight is J.K. Dobbins, who they gave a 65.5, a D rating. And I just want to give you some J.K. Dobbins stats from last season just to emphasize how ridiculous this is. He led all running backs in yards per carry. All running backs. He had 6 yards per carry last season, which is incredible. He was the number 3 among rookie running backs in rush yards. He had 805 rush yards. And the top 2 other rookies had around 100 more attempts than he did. So he is just completely blowing by these rookies. And his attempts will 100% go up next year. And PFF ranked him as the number 26 running back going into next season, which just completely blows my mind. J.K. Dobbins did respond to this, saying, I just let PFF talk. I'm pretty sure none of those guys really know how to grade film, and Mark Andrews sort of replied with two like squiggly faces, like what are they talking about? So this is completely ridiculous. They have no clue what they're doing. They don't watch anything.
You also have Baker Mayfield and Lamar Jackson in the PFF grade. They gave Baker and Lamar a 77 to a 78.
Oh yeah.
And if you look at the teams, Baker's got way more strength around him and better players, and Lamar did better than Baker did this season. And he has a 1.2 better grade than Baker Mayfield. I don't understand that.
I think the only grade that I sort of understand here is giving Matt Skura a really low grade, who was the center last season who couldn't snap the ball. They gave him a 50.9.
Tanked a couple games for him.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't blame those games. But then, just looking at the player right next to him, guard Bradley Bozeman, who's a really good guard who played really well, they only gave him like 7.7 more points. They gave him a 58.6, and it's still an F grade for a really good guard who I really like. So I don't really know what to say about all of these.
And the Browns' Joel Bitonio has an 86.2.
Well, Batonio's good, but like not.
Bradley Bozeman's also good.
Yeah,
he's not as bad as a 58.6.
He's not 30 points better than
58.6 is ridiculous.
Yeah. All right.
We're gonna head into our next segment. PFF did a tight ends ranking list, which
This was awful.
caught my eye. Three big ones stood out to me. First, Kyle Pitts at number 4. I get all the hype around Kyle Pitts. I think he's going to do really well. Matt Ryan does love his tight ends. But I don't understand how you get away with giving a guy who has not played in an NFL game a top 5 spot when there are people like TJ Hawkinson and Mark Andrews who had very good years the past 2 years. Like, I don't understand how you can put Kyle Pitts that high yet. They gave Zach Ertz the number 13 spot, who, first of all, isn't even the main guy in Philly anymore. And one stat that stood out to me is he averaged less than 1 yard per route run. So, I mean, if that's all it takes to get you to the number 13 spot over tight ends who actually played last year, well, then, I mean, I guess I could be a tight end.
To be honest,
Good for him.
I would take Nick Boyle, who was out more than half the season, over that.
Absolutely. And then the most shocking one I found was Dallas Goedert at number 5. Goddard is a great blocker, but he was tied for 80th in yards per catch and tied for 90th in receptions, and he gets the 5 spot.
No sense.
It makes no sense at all. And like, if this is going into the season, he doesn't even have a quarterback who's like proven himself yet.
He has no
Jalen Hurts didn't really play that much last season. We don't know how good he is. Like, I mean, there's so many much better tight ends than Goddard and Ertz, like Andrews, Hawkinson, Robert Tonyan.
Yeah, they put Tonyan at 15. I'm shocked that they put him up. He was really good.
Tonyan should have made the Pro Bowl last year.
He was the second best tight end in the NFC last year.
He should have made the Pro Bowl.
It seems like after slots 1, 2, 3, who they gave to Kelsey, Kittle, and Waller,
which is fine.
That's fine. It seems like after those 3 spots, they pulled names out of a hat. Like they put Tonyan at 15. They put Logan Thomas at 14, who I thought had a really good year. Much better than Ertz, much better than Noah Fant, much better than Rob Gronkowski, who they put at 9, which is a stretch, I think, because he didn't have that great of a season last year at all. It just doesn't make sense at all. And I guess sort of another thing that they do that really bothers me is they have this mock draft simulator. And this mock draft simulator, I think that this is the worst of PFF in my opinion.
This sums up PFF better than anything else.
So around the NFL draft, Will and I ate lunch together in our group advisories at school for like the pandemic lunch stuff, and we would mess around with this just to experiment and show how awful this is. And basically how it works is you'd click into it and it would run through each team and select a player for each team. And the simulation is so bad. It's crazy how often guys who are supposed to go high didn't go high. For example, how often Trevor Lawrence didn't even go number 1. Kyle Pitts often made it out of the top 15.
Mac Jones.
Yeah, Mac Jones
24.
often went like towards the end of the draft. Sometimes he didn't make it in the first round. Sometimes Trey Lance didn't make it in the first round. It didn't make sense. So I went ahead and before this episode, went into the simulator. I clicked in it once. This is the very first thing that happened when I clicked into it. They said that with the first pick, oh gosh, the Jacksonville Jaguars were going to take Penei Sewell. Don't get me wrong, good player.
A tight end.
No, offensive tackle. So this is who the Lions took. And this pick just makes absolutely no sense when everyone in the world thinks that they're taking Trevor Lawrence first. So there's a bunch of other things in here that just made even less sense in my opinion. The Ravens, they had taking Najee Harris with 27.
Which is the last thing that team needs.
They have Gus Edwards and Jake. Well, actually, if they think J.K. Dobbins isn't good, maybe that it might make sense.
That's true. According to PFF, J.K. Dobbins is a 26 best. He's not good at all.
They already had Harris being better than J.K. Dobbins, a better running back than him, even though he's played 0 snaps, and J.K. Dobbins led the league last year in yards per carry, but that's all right. They also had the Steelers taking Mac Jones when there were several other players who definitely would have been better, like Harris there. Well, first of all, too, they let Mac Jones make it to 24 when there's definitely teams in front of them who they didn't have taking a quarterback who might have drafted a quarterback had that situation come up, like the Washington football team and the Bears didn't take a quarterback in this mock draft. In this mock draft, they had the Eagles taking a quarterback and ditching, I guess, Jalen Hurts. They took Trey Lance, which is just Jalen Hurts 2.0, I guess. So literally, and so it's random every time, but the randomness is just so unbelievably awful that just it kills me to do this. How about we move on, since that I can't talk about this anymore. It just makes my head hurt how much their mock draft simulator sucks. Andrew, how about you?
All right,
you
so
go ahead.
going on about some more about crazy things that PFF has stated in the past couple months and weeks. They came out and talked about Tyreek Hill. They listed him as the best deep threat in NFL history.
Wow.
And in the past 2 years, he had great seasons. We get it. But putting him in front of Randy Moss, Deshaun Jackson, Jerry Rice, and many others that beat Tyreek Hill in stats in pretty much every category in the NFL, to put him as the best deep threat in NFL history is probably the most absurd statement I've ever seen. And I mean, that's one example of PFF making a crazy statement, showing how they're in it for attention. I mean, that anyone else who watches a single game of football knows that is the worst statement anyone could make. I mean, it just shows how their goal is to pretty much get attention for their crazy statements rather than make good statements that people actually like to see. So,
I mean, what I found funny too is just going back to what we were talking about earlier on that tweet and also on that Instagram post, people just went off on them and they started like debating, but the debate was everyone versus PFF. no one agreed with them on that take, and I just found it really funny just to see people like validating the fact that PFF really isn't great. I just want to read some. I just want to read some of the comments here. Someone said, "How could he be a better deep threat than Randy Moss, who has the same speed but 5 inches taller than him and can jump way higher? Please don't act like this man doesn't exist," with a picture of Randy Moss that has his stat line for the game where he had 3 catches for 163 yards and 3 touchdowns on all 3 of his catches. Another one that says, Randy Moss says, "Hold my cash, homie." There's just so much funny stuff that's on there that's just PFF slander. And people are really on the anti-PFF social media train, which really lights me up every time I see this.
I mean, I hope PFF continues to do what they do because it's become a sense of joy and happiness for NFL fans to bond over and laugh at their
It's just
take.
funny at this point. Like, no one takes it seriously. It's just a thing that it makes you laugh if you look at it.
Yeah, are they really pro or no? Yeah, definitely no.
Anyway, for the last segment of this podcast, we're going to a bit of normalcy. Obviously, we felt we should talk about all the Julio Jones trade talk because that has just started swirling around all the NFL fans. So the best 3 landing spots for Julio Jones, coming in at number 3 is the Baltimore Ravens. This might not be on a lot of people's list, but it is on mine. They have the lowest salary as of right now for any NFL offense, and I feel like paying a man like Julio would go a long way, assuming you could do some restructuring around the rest of the offense to be able to sign Lamar later on. The Ravens are a team of small, speedy receivers, and I feel like if you get a big guy like Julio's, who's a big deep threat and can moss people, it would really be a great combination and would open up a lot of opportunities for smaller guys like Hollywood and Rashad Bateman. At number 2, I have the Patriots, whose number 1 need right now is a receiver. They got Aguilar in free agency, and currently he's their number 1. Which is not good at all. Aguilar had 1 good year, but I don't think he's ready to be in the number 1 role. And Belichick is no stranger to adding big-name wide receivers, and I think he would love to continue his trend and get a guy like Julio for Mac Jones. And at number 1, I have the Tennessee Titans. After losing Corey Davis, they only have 1 target in the air attack, and just imagine an offense where you have to cover Julio Jones, A.J. Brown, and worry about Derrick Henry at the same time.
That's unstoppable.
Yeah.
I can't think of any defense that has the manpower to stop 3 massive guys like that. If they got Julio, I immediately put them as my Super Bowl contenders.
They're unstoppable offense right there.
One team that I would look to maybe add to that list would probably be San Francisco, the 49ers. Just because of their head coach, Shanahan, just with the connection. He was the Falcons head coach when they lost to the Patriots in that Super Bowl, so he's obviously has a really strong connection with Julio Jones just with the time that they shared in Atlanta together. And I think that offense definitely needs some help. Jimmy G could use some help. Trey Lance could use some help if he steps in. They have Kittle. Imagine just going back to that scenario where you have a lot of guys to cover. Imagine a situation where you have George Kittle in the middle of the field with Julio Jones as your X receiver, and then you also have really good running backs, and then you also have Brandon Ayuk, who is a rookie who played really well. So they could have a much improved offense if they added him.
Yeah, it goes back to the same thing, combining the big guy, the big target, and letting the speedy receivers open up for opportunities.
Yeah, 100%. So the team that really intrigued me from that list the most was your number 2 team, the Patriots, just for a few reasons. One, Julio Jones said that he was interested in playing with Cam Newton, and a lot of Patriots players have already come out to say that Cam Newton has really improved his throwing accuracy after having his shoulder surgery in either 2018 or 2019, his throwing accuracy was really bad, as we saw last year. He was really underperforming. And if Cam Newton's able to have that deep threat accuracy and arm strength that he had before, Cam Newton to Julio Jones would be really dangerous. But the one thing, though, that also adds another level to that intrigue is the fact that they drafted a quarterback in the first round, Mac Jones. So if they have Mac Jones just on the sideline, if Cam Newton and Julio Jones are playing really well, I find that situation could be interesting with everything going on there.
All right, that's going to wrap it up for our 4th edition of the 2v1 podcast. We hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Once again, I'm Will Tannenbaum with Henry Geller and Andrew Riemann, and we'll see you in the next episode. Thank you.